Hello, my name is Hemingway Jones and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to thoroughly clean, disassemble, and re-ink the Lamy Safari. First off, if you haven't seen my review of this pen, please look for it in the list of my videos. It's very comprehensive. This is definitely one of my favorite pens. It's a very strong, interesting, lightweight, fun to use, nearly indestructible fountain pen. And if you take good care of it, it will last you for the rest of your life. It's also quite modular, easy to disassemble, reassemble, easy to ink, and a lot of fun to use. Also, I have the converter for this. I believe it's the Z26 converter, and I'm not using cartridges. I just feel like the converter makes the ink flow better and it allows for much smoother writing. So that's the way I'll be showing this pen today, but if you use the cartridge, it's slightly different. You just don't have to deal with the converter. Step one in cleaning out your pen is to take a jar or a glass. I keep one by the sink. Fill it up with warm water. I think warm water works well to loosen up whatever ink may have dried. So you're essentially filling it up with the water as if you were filling it up with ink. I do this 4, 5, 6 times, however much I need to get all the ink out of the converter. So once that's complete, I usually give the nib and the feed and the grip a thorough rinse. You can see here that there's a pretty good ring of ink around the end of the nib. So I'm going to rinse that pretty thoroughly just to make sure I can get all of that ink away from there. And it runs off fairly easily, but if you do a nice clean and then you realize that you've left a bunch of ink on there, it can be a little distracting. So now I disassemble the pen, just like you would if you were filling it. Simply unscrew it, take out the converter, and separate it from the feed. Now I'm going to pull off the nib, and to do this, I use a bit of a latex glove as a grip. You can use one of those jar grip openers, or places like Goulet pens sell a special tool. Now the nib simply slides right off of the feed, which is incredibly handy. And now you can rinse out that grip section so easily, make that very thorough. There tends to be a lot of ink in there. Get all of that out. And the feed, give it a nice thorough rinse. If you feel like it's clogged, you may want to soak it, maybe even overnight, but usually a good rinse will take care of it. And sometimes once or twice, whatever it takes to get that nice and clean. And the same thing with the nib. The nib rinses off very easily. One of the things I love about these pens is how easy it is to change nibs. Now this is the calligraphy nib and it's just brilliant. So I also give the converter a good rinse and my hands. You can see I got a lot of ink on myself. And don't forget the actual barrel of the pen and all the other pieces. They can get some ink on them too. And if you get a stray bit of ink, even if it's wet, it can really go a long way. So I rinse out the cap, I rinse out the body, I just clean the whole entire thing as thoroughly as I can, especially with this pen. It's so tough, the plastic is so great, it's very easy to clean. So slipping the nib back onto the feed is so easy. It's easy to change nibs with these pens. And this, of course, is that calligraphy nib. I cannot say enough how much I love this nib. It's a great writer. So once all that is done, I usually put it on a paper towel to dry for an hour or two, maybe overnight. Now it's time to gas up our Lamy Safari pen. And we're going to use one of my favorite colors, the Diamine Oxblood. It is such a great red. It's very visceral. It looks amazing on the page. It has beautiful contrast. You can see it here. I just love this color so much. It's so expressive and so interesting. Someday I want to do a journal just in that color. So you put the entire nib into the ink and you twist it a few times in and out just to flush all the air out. And to get a really nice, really full fill, you want to make sure you get as much ink in there as possible. And now I always squeeze out at least a drop or two just to make sure all the air is out and that it's ready to be primed. The feed is full of ink and you're ready to go. So of course you have to then clean off the nib. Be careful. Microcloth is a little bit better than a paper towel, but whatever you have handy, just don't get any fibers in your nib. So to continue the automobile analogy, this is now where the rubber meets the road. The whole point of all of this is how well does this pen write? And those of you who have written with this know that it is just an amazing pen. Part of that is its lightness, its dexterity. One of the things that holds me back a little bit is that contoured nib. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I've learned to adapt. Now, look here, you can see how amazing that calligraphy nib is. Do you see the line variation? It has quite a wide downstroke and a very nice narrow cross stroke. It's just amazing and very expressive. Now, for me personally, I have no more interest in fine or medium nibs. If it's not some sort of stub nib, calligraphy, maybe a cursive italic, I'm just not interested anymore. I just want more interesting and expressive writing. Although I will say more and more I'm seeing medium nibs that have a bit of this line variation too. So this is an incredible writer. It's very expressive. It flows so well. It's so smooth, and it doesn't even have any metal tipping material under the nib. But it is just a joy to write with. Just an amazing, expressive nib. So the Lamy Safari is easily one of my favorite pens for this alone. In this current setup, it's about $29 for the pen, and the nib cost around $14. I actually took it from a Lamy Joy that I had, so that's what I did, and I put the old nib onto that pen. So easy. So an amazing nib, highly recommend. So those are all the steps in how to take apart this fantastic pen, reassemble it, and get it ready to write again. Now you really only have to clean it this thoroughly if you're changing the color of the ink. Even if you're going from one blue to another blue, you might not necessarily have to go through all of this unless the shades of blue are vastly different. However, I usually do in between every ink change just to keep everything running well and flowing, if you will. So I think we covered it all. Now you know how to do it. You can field strip your own Lamy Safari fountain pen and clean it or replace any one of the components. They're all very replaceable, including the nib. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll take a look at my other videos. And if you would, please subscribe. Also like, leave me a comment, hit all the bells, the whistles, whatever, and come back and see me again. I'd really appreciate it.